Techno Music Show hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played. Coming to you straight out of Detroit, the birthplace of techno music. Coming to you each and every week online via our website as well as our podcast. Follow us on social media and keep up with us with the music alerts. This is T. Carlita for the In My House Techno Music Show. In My House, hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played. All right, this is T. Carlita for the In My House Techno Music Show, coming to you again with some true stories, some great music, and getting to know the who's who behind the scenes. And I really take pride in bringing you people that you might know, reintroduce, introduce. So that's my goal and my mission in 2025 is to just introduce and connect with people that I haven't connected with in the past. So Ryan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So this is our first time meeting virtually. Interesting. We're doing the Jetsons, hey.
That's right.
So so introduce yourself to me. Tell me who you are. And I know Beretta music. We can talk about that in a minute. But who's
Sure.
Ryan?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Illinois, so I'm not originally from the Detroit area. Traveled all over. I was in the military for a period of time, so I spent time in Japan and Guam, that's where I met my wife, Juju, who some folks might know. And then when I got out of the military in 2001, I moved to Detroit. So we lived in the city from '01 to '04, ended up moving to California for several years. We continued Beretta music from remote with my buddy Brian Kage. And then we moved back here. I got the opportunity to move back, be closer to family out here in 2021. So, and then we kind of really picked up steam with the label and music stuff kind of around then. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's good. So you're a label owner, but in your beginnings, how did you get involved with the music scene? How did you get involved and how did you get into doing music?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I started like many of us probably going to shows, and this is when I was in the military, when I actually lived in Japan. So, some of my colleagues were more familiar with dance music than I was, and I kind of got introduced to it in the late 90s. It was probably like 97, 98 when I really started noticing, artists and going to shows. This was in Tokyo. So we used to ride the train up, from Yokosuka, where the military base was, get on the train, go right up to Tokyo, party the whole way. And, being boisterous Americans probably on the train. And that was my exposure to dance music. But interestingly, Tokyo had a very tight connection with New York. So my early days of music were, of course, there was trance back then. So there was a little bit of that. But the New York house scene was very tied with Tokyo. There's actually a documentary about this out there now too. I think it's a King Street Records documentary about how they had this very tight couple with Tokyo. So got to see a lot of great shows there. And I started DJing when I was in Japan, and then it really picked up when I went to Guam in like 1999, and I got a lot of opportunity there to like actually play shows and stuff when I was very, very green. So I got a lot of great, stick time just being in there in the booth and playing music and stuff like that.
You are in my house, hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played.
Welcome, Judge Mathis. Thanks for coming to share an important message with the Wayne County taxpayers.
Well, thank you for allowing me to help. You know, most of my life I was a resident of Wayne County, and so I'm here to help because Treasurer Shabri wants to work with owners to keep families in their homes and prevent foreclosure.
If you're having trouble making your property tax payments, let us know. We have many resources to help.
Already in a payment plan? It's important you stay in good standing.
Making property tax payments is now easier than ever. We have placed payment kiosks in community centers across the county. We've also added kiosks in our offices. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com.
And remember, stay safe, save time, make your appointments and payments online.
In My House Radio, online 24/7. Featuring only the best techno and house music. And be sure to tune in for Sunday Inspiration, every Sunday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get connected, www.inmyhouse65.com.
So when you in military and in foreign country, Tokyo and Guam, where you were at, how did you know anything about the Detroit music scene? Like, where do you fit in with the Detroit music scene? When did you first experience that?
Yeah, good question. So I was starting to get familiar with it before I got out of the military when I was in Guam and starting to research Detroit, because what connected us with Detroit was my wife. Her dad had a house there that was just sitting there that was passed down to him in the East English Village. And so we started researching Detroit music then, and we were really excited to come here because we were so into electronic music, right? But Guam and these places, they don't always have that kind of a flourishing scene. So we were very excited to come here. So it was in about 2001 when we really went headlong into the music scene here and really learning about the culture and some of the artists and the rich history of music here. We really got into it. And I met the rest of the Beretta crew. I met them around 01, 02, right in that same time frame.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
when you began to do your research, who was it that kind of really gave you that, oh my God?
Well, I mean, I think being the techno city, it immediately went to the top, right? Our forefathers of techno. And so it's like, we're all living in their shadows at that point. So it was pretty awe-inspiring to see people like Juan Atkins and Derek May and those folks. And I had seen clips of like Derek May playing at, he did a big show in Tokyo. It was called Wire 99. And some of the Detroit artists were already playing in Japan. So I was familiar with the names, but I can't say that I knew all the tracks and everything then. But I knew like hey, there's got to be some stuff popping in Detroit, right? There's a whole history here.
Mhm.
So I guess I was a little late to the game, but I mean, there's a lot of new people now that have only been in the game for a couple years. So this was like about 2001 when I really just went headlong into it.
Wow. So tell us about Beretta. How did that come about? Tell us what is the ethos behind it? How did it start? Were you guys just like doing shots and said, hey, no, I'm just kidding. Usually a lot of
Yeah,
things come out of doing shots.
that's right. I mean, that could have been happening, but
You don't
funny
remember.
enough,
Okay.
like, so I think we were talking about making an artist collective. This was even before we moved to Detroit. And my wife, Juju, actually thought of the name Beretta Music. She came up with that. And so when we moved to Detroit, we actually set it up as kind of like a way to just connect artists. We weren't thinking like putting out records at the time. So we had a whole website back when we all used to build websites before social media was kind of what it is today. And we had like artist profiles on there. Like we had Disco D on there. We met Seth Troxler when he was like 15 years old, and we got a whole bunch of stories with that. But really, it started as just a way to like learn, meet people, learn about people, and kind of like it was like an artist collective kind of thing more so than it was a music label. Um, it wasn't until there was an open turntable night, like way out in St. Clair Shores, and it was like an opportunity to meet people and play music for free and just network with people. And that's where I met Brian Kage. And so, we started working more closely together. And he was a great producer then. He was producing, of course, different music because it was a different time. But I was making music, wasn't so great. Kage was very, very good. I was very impressed with like his production skills. So we just started getting in the studio and working together. And I think we kind of organically got to a point where we said, hey, like we should put out music. And he's like, well, I don't know how that works. And I said, well, first of all, we just say we have a label, right? And so we just
Okay.
kind of we just started it, we just started it as out of thin air. So it kind of went from being an artist collective to meet people to a label. But we've always had that ethos. It was always about the people. It's still about the people to me. It's about meeting people. It's not about anybody getting famous and traveling the world. If that happens, awesome. But to
Mhm.
me, still today, it's all about meeting people and connecting people.
So what type of music, like you guys, so the label as it is evolved now, do you sign artists or is it still more so you and Brian? Is it open to other artists? How has it expanded from that day?
Yeah, good question. So I think in the very early days, it was just us putting out music kind of thing. We had a couple other folks that were more involved, but over time we've really expanded that, and we've always looked for new talent, like Ryan Crossan, Luke Hess, Seth Troxler. All these people came through Beretta Music in the early days, and we were always like meeting new people and listening for kind of what's fresh going on, and always trying to incorporate that into the label. So. I think it was when Ghostly was doing parties at the shelter or the lower part of the shelter. We were like, wow, what's this? Because we were doing kind of techno and house in a traditional sense. We said, wow, this is a different sound that Ghostly is doing, like this is a big thing. And so Crossan and Luke Hess and Seth and those guys were doing more minimal kind of techno. So around that time, I think it was about '03 or '04, we started Beretta Gray, which is more of a techno offshoot. Because we wanted to really have like some defined lines between house and techno and not try to blend it all together. So we still do put out techno records, not as much. I kind of see it more as a house label. That's where my passion is with house, just kind of all variations of house, whether it's deep or funky house or more energetic type of stuff. So from a sound perspective, that's kind of where it's at, I guess.
Wow. So who are well, you already mentioned Luke Hess and Seth Trout. I did not even know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. And man, Seth is like, whew,
Oh, I know. He really blew up. I know.
and just imagine you knew him when he was 15, just getting busy. And it's like, whoa, this guy is like massive major, you never know who's gonna be what, right?
Yeah, we met him at Motor Detroit in line, and he was 15 and he had fake ID. That's how we met Seth. And so he wasn't making music or anything back then, but we became very close friends. We're still friends with his parents, and like his mom would always be like, she would feel safe that he was with us. He was literally like 15, 16 years old, and we were hanging out. And I know Kagi helped him a lot with production and stuff like that too, very early on. So yeah, it's amazing to see somebody that could, rise to that level. He's done very great for himself.
Wow.
So yeah.
So when you're researching, or when people send you music to be considered, what are you looking for? Like, what style, technique, or is there a certain vibe or style? If somebody was interested in submitting music, do you have a preference per se?
It's a good question. I think we're very maybe to a fault. I mean, most labels that put out vinyl, we're always so like selective, and like I'll be very hard on myself, and like, I want to put out some music, but putting it on vinyl is such a big stretch. But like, for instance, we just did this one with John Briggs. He goes by Zoetic. I don't know if probably get some reflection there, but
That's cool.
His stuff is very like soulful, very musical with a lot of instrumentation. And it's just there's not one particular sound as long as it's in the lane of house, like whether it's a deeper house or more of a funky, energetic thing. I'm pretty open on that. It's just like sometimes you just hear something and you're just like, just hits you in the chest, you're just like, wow, this is something great. That's how I felt about John Briggs, Zoetic. I've known him for over 20 years. So this is the one we just put out. It's out there now. So I don't really have one particular sound. We also did a record with like Des Andres, so we have that one. We do this kind of like cool artwork with the person's face. So
And it's I've seen that. I've seen that record. I've seen it, and I love Des. Oh man,
I know he's great, right?
Oh
And we did
yeah,
little
and a
45 with
nice
him.
person.
He's very nice.
He
He's
is
just very
such a nice
eclectic.
person.
He's underrated, man. I mean,
He is awesome.
yeah, he's
Wow.
great.
Okay. So you guys hanging with some of the big dogs. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's taken a long time. Like, I'm very thankful for those connections with people and being able to network, and like Des don't talk to everybody, right?
Nope.
So if you can get time with these people and they trust you, they'll want to share their music with you. I also, I'm willing to take chances on people that are completely new. Like, we have a long history of doing that as well. So it doesn't always have to be a Des or like an Agent X Clark or somebody like that. We'll take chances, even if we have to eat some cost on vinyl. We really believe wholeheartedly in putting out vinyl too.
So when somebody sends you work, like, I'm not very familiar with what record labels accept or don't accept. So do people still send like totally raw, or do you need it to be mastered, produced, and ready to go? Or do you guys take a raw draft edit, like a pitch? I'm thinking journalist. So I'm a journalist. Do they send you pitch work and then you kind of go from there, and then, or how does that work anyway? So somebody like me, I'll just say me, but it ain't gonna be me. I want to do some music, but I'm not quite for sure. And I think it's okay. Is it wise for that person to send it to a label, or should it be almost really ready to go? How does that work? Because there's a lot of people that probably in today, because back in the day, it was a whole way to do it. So how does that work?
Yeah, I'm sure it differs by label. Like, if you send something nervous or defected, like, you probably want it to be like the best it could ever be, right? Because they get like thousands of demos all the time and they're flooded with it and they're just churning out, denying people nonstop. We're not that big. That doesn't happen to us. We get onesie, twosie demos here and there. But I always encourage people to share. Like, don't overthink it. Like, there's people that I work with now, I won't name names, but they'll just lob stuff over the fence at us or me, and I'm like, dude, or this is great, like, keep going with this, or you can polish this. But if somebody sends us something that just needs to be like mixed or mastered, like Brian Kagi is our go-to. For folks that don't know, he runs his own mastering. So like all of Norm's records on Upstairs Asylum, most records you see come out of Detroit have probably gone through his studio. So we have that capability where he can, like, I'll send him a whole track, like, and my stuff is not perfect ever, right? So I'll send it to him and he can mix it down and master it and get it sounding just perfect. So we have that capability. It's just like the core of that track has to be really good, right? But I still encourage people always share. Like I know we're all our own worst critic, and we tend to be like, oh, this isn't good enough, it's not good enough. And then you send it to somebody and they're like, man, this is great. Like, thanks for sharing it, right? So share your music with your peers or labels. Like I think it's healthy, and Detroit people are very welcoming to that, like sharing stuff. And we'll all play each other's tracks even if they're not out, they're not finished. That's okay. Like it's okay if it's a little raw, I think.
You are in my house, hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
In My House Radio, online 24/7. Featuring only the best techno and house music. And be sure to tune in for Sunday Inspiration, every Sunday from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get connected, www.inmyhouse65.com.
So if you could speak to, and I always ask guests to share some words of encouragement, words of advice to upcoming artists, people who are like in their bedrooms thinking I just can't. What would you say to someone contemplating right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I saw in one of your other interviews you asked that, and I think it differs a little bit. Like I heard somebody say, "Oh, come up with your own unique sound," and I think that will come over time naturally. But I think just knowing the tools, like picking a software or hardware to work with that you feel comfortable with, and just I think repetition is very good too. I feel myself get rusty if I'm not in the studio. I get too busy and I'm out doing other things. I come back to it. Sometimes I have a fresh set of ears. Sometimes I feel a little rusty. So I would say for new people, consistency is really good. Like just keep iterating. I also think that finding somebody who's maybe better than you, right? Or you perceive them to be more experienced than you. Most of those folks will lend an ear to you. I know some newer folks that sit down with very experienced folks, and it just accelerates their learning. So if you can find a mentor or a peer or somebody like that can just sit down, like I've showed people Ableton, like it seems completely mind blowing when you look at Ableton live, right? If you don't know what you're doing. But if you sit down with somebody that can show you for like 15 minutes, oftentimes people just start going with it. So I do think just finding a peer that you can sit down with is very, very helpful. So that was kind of a convoluted answer, but
no, I'm glad you gave that advice, because a lot of people like myself, or that think they whatever, they feel intimidated. And when you said reach out to someone else, or reach out to, who do you idolize, who you look up to, why don't you hook up? And believe it or not, most often they are so excited. First of all, you're like, when they think they're not all that anymore, it's like they've gone through the cycle and they may be feeling down, and then they get to this phone call like, hey, and they'll be like, me? You want to talk to me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think our music scene here, I've heard of other cities, I won't name names, but that it can be kind of closed off, and I never felt like that in Detroit. I feel like people are generally very open and sharing with different things. And there's so much possibility with music, right? Like even if I show you something, we're gonna make completely different music probably. So I do think it's good advice. Like Kage helped me a lot along the years. He's helped many, many people too. So I think being around others that are doing it and you can kind of bounce ideas off of, sit in the same room with your laptops and maybe, noodle on some things in Ableton or whatever, DAW that you use. I think that's helpful.
So Beretta music, it is house music format, right?
I would say so.
Primarily house music, right?
Yep, exactly.
So if someone is a house producer and they want to send to you, or pitch you a demo reel, how would they send that to you?
You can just send it. Our email is berettamusicdetroit@gmail.com. As long as the attachment isn't too big. I mean, I've had people send me links to stuff that's private on SoundCloud too.
Right.
It doesn't have to be the whole MP3, but just some link where I can go listen to it. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Can you send me that so I could maybe play it and, try it out on Twitch or something like that? And most people are very accommodating, or if they're really protective, they might be like, let me, hash this out a little bit more, and then I'll give it to you. I totally understand that as well. But yeah, they can just email us.
Awesome. That's very good. Thank you so much for that information. And thank you for taking time. And I know you got a Twitch. So how do you do Twitches often? Look, do you Twitch often?
Yeah. We oddly enough, I'm on in a few hours. We do it usually every Friday. I played last night too with a different group, but Agent X, he did a track called In the House Club. And so I work with Agent X and some other people. Agent X is on right now. And we do what's called a raid train, where we kind of spill the users over, or the listeners over, into each other's channels. It's really fun. It's very collaborative. If folks aren't on Twitch yet, I'll say just jump in there. I've actually met so many people just in the chat. It's very, very fun. Ours is just twitch.tv/Beretta Music. Pretty easy to find us on there. But the Twitch community is very, very collaborative. So if you are a new producer, that's a great place to go to meet people and network. And we're all very close. If we see Twitch people out, like we've done parties where we have name tags as like, here's my real name, here's my Twitch name. And
that's cute.
It's a fun community. So
wow, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad to know that, because people are going live in so many different places. And during COVID, we all did it. I did it. And you're right. It's fun when when you first can get them off Facebook to come to your Twitch page.
Yeah, sure. Yep.
But I love the right there real-time chat, the conversation that's going on while you playing something, and people are getting to know each other. It's like it's the club now. It's the lounge. Everybody's getting to know each other, and that's really cool. I met some really cool people through Twitch as well. So it's definitely working. That's for sure. So before I let you get back into your day, your production time, is there any final thoughts that you would like to share with the viewing audience to kind of like encourage, motivate, inspire? Any final words from you?
Yeah, sure. I think you covered some good ground on like when you're starting production, but I would say like don't be afraid to come out to the shows and meet people. I find Detroit artists and producers are very approachable. So like I've met a lot of people coming. We have a monthly event we do at Speaker Box. So like if you want to meet us, just come out. Like we welcome people with open arms. We're not a closed group in any sense, and I think most nights are not. So if you want to get into the music and the scene, the best way to do it, I think, is to get out there and shake hands and meet people, and we'll be out there. But yeah,
just good. A little old school networking. Don't
just
hurt
old school networking. We like that in Detroit. It's like, come on, let's chat it up.
I know that's right. Well, thank you so much, Ryan, for taking time out of your schedule today. I truly appreciate you. I'm here. You got something, send it to me. I do music alerts. I play music on my radio broadcast 24/7. So keep in touch, stay in touch. I'll see you around after the winter is over. I'll be out when it's a little warmer.
Right.
So you'll see me around the way. Just gotta get a little degrees, gotta be up a little bit more for me.
Yeah, it's coming down right now. It's
Oh
snowing
yeah, for
right now.
sure. So thank you again. And all of the information is right there on the screen for you. Keep in touch, and I appreciate you so much. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the
All
time. I
right.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, this is T. Carlita for the In My House Techno Music Show, where the true stories are told and great music is played.
You are In My House, hosted by T. Carlita, where the true stories are told and great music is played.